I cannot think of anything more dehumanizing than someone having to wait until you're close to the threat of death to beg someone to save your life, and then providers second guessing whether saving your life is a crime. People find out that they need abortions throughout their pregnancies. Yes, at any time and for any reason.
Those were the powerful words of Renee Bracey Sherman, an organizer and abortion rights advocate who made history in her appearance before Congress this week. In testimony that has Republican lawmakers up in arms, Bracey Sherman described for the women of America how to self-manage an abortion using pills. Republicans were furious, not just because of Bracey Sherman's testimony, but because she highlighted just how blindly cruel the new anti-abortion laws really are. And when Bracey Sherman talks about women bleeding out from miscarriages while skittish hospitals refuse to provide care, she isn't being theoretical. This is an America that already exists today. Bracey Sherman was locked in an argument with Republican Arizona Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, who claims to be unapologetically pro-life. But Lesko has also said that she would be willing to shoot her own grandchildren in order to protect them from liberals taking their guns away. But Lesko wants you to know she only meant that as a last resort. If her conduct at this week's hearing is any indication, Lesko still has some anger management issues to work on. Republican pundits couldn't wait to feign outrage over Bracey Sherman's testimony. The first time anyone has used a federal forum to outline how to obtain an abortion outside of a medical setting. But Bracey Sherman's testimony highlights a new reality for women, especially those in lower income groups or women of color. If you want an abortion in 2022, you may have to do it yourself.
And I want them to know that there are safe methods to self-managing their abortions according to the World Health Organization. It is 1 mifepristone pill followed by 4 misoprostol pills dissolved under the tongue 24 to 48 hours later, or a series of 12 misoprostol pills, 4 at a time, dissolved under the tongue every 3 hours. There's no way to test it in the bloodstream, and a person doesn't need to tell the police what they took.
That's because states like Idaho, Missouri, and others are exploring legislation that wouldn't just ban abortion within their state's borders. It would also criminalize the act of leaving the state to get an abortion. That would be true even if the individual obtains an abortion in a state where it's legal. In order to enforce those laws, Missouri is proposing a familiar tactic, turning its citizens into bounty hunters and deputizing them to spy on the women of their communities. And at the same time that Republicans are taking away fundamental abortion rights, they're also making it much harder to avoid getting pregnant in the first place. Louisiana is on track to ban all forms of birth control and mail-order contraception, under the argument that life begins the moment the egg is fertilized. That's farther than Republicans have proposed going before. But in a new post-Roe America, that level of crazy is just the starting point. Renee Bracey Sherman offers one more reminder that America is hostile to the existence of women as free and equal citizens. And even trusted safeguards, once considered untouchable, are now at risk of falling. In Alaska, Republicans are threatening to impeach every single member of their state's Supreme Court until they appoint justices willing to overrule Alaska's constitutional abortion protections. Suddenly, knowing how to perform your own at-home abortions doesn't seem so crazy. Bracey Sherman also broke another taboo. By actually talking about what's happening to women in America, she's forcing Republicans to respond. And in this fight against abortion rights, silence is the GOP's best friend. By convincing a generation of Democrats that even talking about abortion is political suicide, the right has shut Democrats up at just the time they should be shouting. Bracey Sherman, unlike others, isn't buying it. We've seen stories from across the country of women denied abortions even though they met the quote-unquote exceptions outlined in red state abortion laws. And that's the hard truth, isn't it? That whatever Republicans write about exceptions, they certainly don't feel compelled to follow the law once it is the law. And as a result, women will die. Activists like Renee Bracey Sherman can't win the fight for reproductive freedom on their own. They need partners in Washington. They need Democrats to act. But unfortunately, action is one of the things we haven't seen in Congress recently. But if Democrats want any hope of holding on to their slim majorities in November, they need to make sure that women don't need to follow Renee Bracey Sherman's abortion advice before it's too late.